Hello everyone and welcome to another Houdini tutorial. Today we are going to be modeling a lighter, like a Zippo lighter, and we're going to spark it a couple times trying to get it to ignite, and then on the third time it'll ignite with a flame. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and make a project and save. Alright, now that we got the project and the file saved, let's go ahead and drop down a geometry node here, and we'll call this lighter. Dive inside and drop down a box. So we want this to be more flat and more rectangle shaped. Let's shrink that. Maybe 0.3, yeah, that works. And let's make it a little bit taller as well. About right there. Looks good. Now let's round out the edges. So I'm going to drop down a poly bevel. Let's increase the distance a little bit. I'm going to do 2 divisions. Let's do like 0.45. I'm gonna go back and increase the width a little bit. Let's go back to 0.4. Let's make this 0.04. I mean, it's rounded edges, but it's not too round, so let me hone in. Let's go with that for now. So if you look at a Zippo lighter, the top here is a little bit higher. So I'm going to select this polygon here and raise it up just a little bit. And that's going to create a edit node for us. Another feature of a lighter is the spot where the flame actually comes out. That's more of a tube. So let's drop down a tube here. Going to hit the display flag here and the template on our edit. Let's shrink the radius scale, lower the height, raise it up, drop down a transform, and raise this up. It can go inside the geometry, that's okay. Let's make this just a little bit bigger. About right there. That looks pretty good. And you'll notice on these lighters, the spout has a bunch of holes in it to let in oxygen. So let's make those now. I'm going to drop down a scatter node here. And it's going to scatter a bunch of points all on our geometry. But we don't really need that many holes, so let's lower this force count down to say maybe 50. Looks good. And now I'm going to put a bunch of spheres on those points and boolean them out. So let's drop down a sphere, and they need to be pretty small, like 0.03, maybe 0.05. Drop down the template here. Let's do 0.03. So now that we have our sphere and our scatter, let's copy to points. Drop down a copy to, and when we hover over it, it'll say geometry to copy or target points to copy. So we want our scatter to be on the target points to copy to, and our sphere to be here. And it's going to put all these spheres every point that we have. I'm going to lower the size of that just a little bit more. Let's do like 0.025. So now we want to boolean these out. Let's drop down a boolean. To go to our original geometry for our spout. Sorry, I'm not sure what exactly that is called. Oh, and I apologize, guys. We're gonna have to go back and make these polygons so they play nice together. There we go. Now that I made this a polygon, let's give it a couple more columns here. Make it a little more fine. 55 and okay. So let's drop down a merge and see what these look like together. Looking at this, I think I want to raise this up just a little bit. And let's move it over. Just okay. If we lower our relaxed iterations, we can adjust how uniform these holes look and lower the scale radii. Let's go with that. Nice and uniform look. All right, so we have our flame spout, or whatever it's called. Now, a lighter normally has this like flint wheel that creates the spark for the lighter fluid to ignite. Let's go ahead and create that now. So I'll drop down a circle, put the template on our merge, and scale this down way down. Let's move this over. So when we strike it, it'll create the sparks right by our gas. And let's make this a polygon so it has points all around the edges because we want to create these teeth. Let's do a ton of divisions, like 75. And I just want to select, if you click on this point display here, you'll see all these points here. Now that we have our points here, we need to select every other one. So I'm going to drop down a group by range. And I want to select one of two. So now select every other point is what I'm telling it. Let's drop down a transform node now. And we only want to target our group range 1's point selection. All right, we have our group. You can see here, each point, every other point is being selected. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So when we scale it down, our points are going to want to shrink down to our pivot point here. So we need to adjust that into the center of our circle. Let's raise our pivot transform here. Move it into the center of our circle. About right there. And shrink it down just a little bit. And that'll create this gear effect for us. Right now it's just in 2D, so let's drop down a poly extrude. Now we have our starter here, our gear that creates the sparks for us. Let's add this to our merge. Oh, we can uncheck these points. Looking at this, I'm going to increase the transform just a little bit. The size of the circle just a little bit. There we go. It's looking pretty good. I think the only thing that we have left is the lid, and we'll just do that with another Boolean. So we already have the geometry of the lid that we want. I'm going to hold Alt and left click this edit here, and let's do a transform. I'm just going to raise this up. Put the template here. And whatever is not being cut off of the Boolean will be our lid, our cap to our lighter. Right there. Drop down another Boolean. And we have our lid. transform this. Make sure I have my handle selected here and rotate this. Put it at this corner here. So it's being flipped open. And looking at this, we just need to delete this polygon right here. Maybe these ones as well. Delete, and that'll create a blast for us. Let's poly extrude this because we can see the interior of it just a little bit. Maybe like 0.002. There, that's looking pretty good. Add this to our merge, so we have all of the geometry together. And we have our lighter here. So now we can create the sparks of our lighter. But looking at that, we need to spin our starter right here, our Flint Wheel. We'll just call this our igniter for now. And when we spin it, it rubs up against the material to create the spark. I'm acting like I know a lot about lighters, but I don't. So let's go ahead and animate this gear to just rotate for us. So now let's drop down a transform node to get this rotating. And we need to adjust the pivot center again, because if we were to just rotate it right now, it's going to go around this pivot center. So we need to adjust that. I'm going to go to where I transformed it here and just Control C. Control V. Go here. Control C. Down here. Control V. And now it's right dead center of our starter, of our gear. So now we can start by animating it. I'm going to wait till frame 24 after 1 second. And I'm going to Alt left click to create a keyframe for our rotate. And after, let's say 3 frames, let's spin it really quick. Let's do it like 240. All right, so it rotates 240 degrees in 3 frames really quick. And then we'll try again after a little, let's say frame 55. Let's Alt left click again. And then after 3 frames, frame 58, let's do it another 240 degrees. 480. So then we try to get it started again. And then the third, we'll just do it 3 times. Let's do it at frame 84. Alt left click, 3 frames, 1, 2, 3. And another 240, so 720. And that'll be how we get our sparks going. Okay, I like it. So let's hop up 1 level. I'm gonna take the template off that. Let's hop up 1 level and create our sparks. So let's drop down a geo node. Call it sparks. Dive in. And we need to create a emitter for our points. So let's do a sphere. Make it a polygon. Decrease the size a ton. Let's get it right to where our starter is. Here. And we want to emit particles from this sphere. Now we'll drop down a pop net and wire this in. So what we're telling it is inside this geometry, create points. This is what happens. They don't go anywhere. They just keep on creating points inside this geometry. So we want our sparks to fly out from this geometry, not just create a ton inside it. To do that, I'm going to go to our Attributes tab. And in our initial velocity, we want to fly out. So set initial velocity. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, that's more like it. But I don't want that many sparks, and I only want them to emit when I spin my gear. So let's go to birth, and we have two options. We have our impulse activation or our constant activation. Constant is seconds, and impulse is frames. I'm going to go by the frames, so let's just turn this off. And let's turn this off for now too. And let's alt left click to make a keyframe. So right now, don't emit any particles. Let's go back to where our gear is animated. And it starts spinning at 24 to 27. So at 24 is when we want to start emitting our sparks. In here. 24, 0, 25, let's put it on 1, and depending on how many sparks you want, let's see 50. Let's see. So it's just going to keep on emitting 50 particles every frame until we tell it to stop. And it stops at, let's say 27, make this 0 again. So now from this time frame, emit the sparks, and then stop. But see how they keep on flying away? They never die, which isn't what a spark would do. Let's change the life expectancy. We only want it to live, so this is seconds, so it's going to live for 100 seconds right now, which isn't what sparks do. They barely live half a second. So let's change this to, let's say 0.3 and see what that looks like. See how long they live. And make sure you have this real time toggle selected. That might be too long. Let's do 0.2. With a variance of 1. That means it could either do 0.1 or 0.3 as well with that variance. Yeah, that looks more like a lighter spark. So let's do the other two attempts to get the spark going. See where our next one is at. 55. Go into our pop. We want it to be 0. And then change it to 1 at frame 56. And the reason we have to keyframe it again at 0 is because Houdini automatically does like a ramp up effect between two keyframes to try and get a smooth animation. So if we don't keyframe it at 0 right before we want our action, it's going to start at 1. It's going to ramp up to 1 about halfway, about like frame 40, 41. So we have to keyframe it at 0 and then 1 and have it go for 2 more frames and change it back to 0. Cool. Now let's do our third attempt. This will be our successful attempt to get our flame going. At frame 84, sparks in. 84, we'll start at 0. Then at 85, let's do 1. Skip forward a couple frames and turn it back to 0. And that third one is what will create our flame. Now we can make our flame going. So drop down yet another geo. We'll call this flame. And we have to create an emitter for this as well. I'll just do a sphere. Get a polygon. Increase the size. And how big the sphere is how big your flame is going to be. So let's set it down here. Looks good. I'm going to do a shelf tool for this one. So with this selected, let's go up to our shelf tools here, Pyro Effects. And most of these do the same thing, just have different starting parameters. And the closest one to a lighter flame is probably candle. So I'll select the candle. select object to burn our flame, hit enter, and it'll create a pyro sim. Let's hop out a second. It'll create this pyro sim. Our dot network is where all the simulation will be happening, and our import for caching purposes. And when we go into our geometry, you'll see that it creates a fuel and it rasterizes it for us. Let's go into our dot network and hit play, see what this looks like. Kinda. One thing that I'm looking at here is the flame seems too big and too noisy to be lighter flame. So let's change that. Let's go to our pyro solver here. So I want it to stop a little bit quicker because the flame is too high to be believable for a lighter. So the first thing we want to do is keep the flame off until our third spark ignites it, which happens on frame 85. So I'm going to go to my volume source, and I don't want it to activate until 85. So I'm going to keyframe right there at 85. And then on 84, let's just keep it at 0. Let's see what this looks like. Spark, spark, and spark. All right, so next thing we want to change is the shape. And we don't really want a lot of disturbance, but we want a little bit, because if there's no disturbance, then the flame is just going to be a solid piece. So we want it to shake just a little bit. Let's try 0.05 and see what that looks like. It's getting there. I think looking at this, when I look at a lighter flame, it seems a lot more fluid, if that makes sense. There's not a lot of these separations and licks. I think I'm going to go to the simulation tab and increase the viscosity just a hair, because this can be really touchy depending on how big your flame is. And the viscosity is just going to make your flame kind of look more thick and fluid-like. Yeah, see how we want more of the round top to it. That looks pretty good to me. I think I'm going to stick with that. So let's increase the resolution here just a bit. Under the smoke objects, the properties, I'm going to lower the division size. It's just like any other simulation that we've done before. The lower the division size, the higher resolution your simulation will look. I'm going to drop this down to around 0.006. And it's going to take a significantly longer time. So let's cache this out. Hop up one level, go to our Pyro import, and drop down a file cache. And for reasons I'll tell you in a second, let's save 260 frames. Hey, it's me from the future. I forgot to record this, but I ended up saving 270 frames instead of 260. Also, I keep referring to the frames as seconds, so please forgive me whenever I say 30 seconds, I really mean 30 frames. I apologize for any misconceptions I may have given. I think I was pretty distracted at this point of the recording by my dog. Call this flame and save to disk. Okay, now that we cached our simulation, let's hit load from disk. Make sure your real-time toggle is on and check it out. That looks pretty good to me. Let me explain why I cache an extra 30 seconds. In real life, when you have a lighter such as this, when the flame ignites, there's not this buildup. I want to skip a couple frames ahead to where my flame is almost fully grown. And that's why I cache an extra 30 seconds, is because I'm going to skip ahead around 30 seconds. So to do that, let's drop down a time shift node. Fire this in. And right here, when you click on frame, you'll see it says $F, which is a representation of our frame. So whatever frame we are on the timeline is whatever frame we're telling it to output. But we want to skip ahead an extra 30 seconds. Right where our flame starts, around 85, we decided. Let's keyframe right here, $F, and skip forward a frame, and we're going to say output the frame plus 30. So when we're on frame 85, we want to be on frame 115. So let's check out that. Display. So right when our spark goes, it's already almost full length. And that's why we cache an extra 30 frames. I think we can go ahead and apply shaders and do our lighting now. Let's start by doing a light. For this scene, I think I want to do like a spotlight from up above. Transform this up. Let's rotate this -90 so it's looking right down at our lighter. Raise this up a little more. Yeah, I just want like a dim light so we can still see our geometry that we made, but it's pretty dark until the flame is ignited. Looking at this now, I'm not crazy that this looks like it's just going straight into the geometry, so let's hurry and cut that out. Let's just drop down another quick boolean, and with our framing right here, let's wire that in, and our case. Check that out. Okay, so it cuts it out now. I like that more. Wire this in. Okay, so that was just a quick little fix. Thanks for letting me do that. Go to here, check it out. Okay, that's looking better. Let's put a camera. I like where the camera is on my viewport right now, so let's actually create a camera stop. But I want it right where my viewport is right now, so I'm going to hold down Control and left click on this camera. So it just creates a camera. It's already looking right where I have it. Let's keep it there for now. Now let's apply shaders. Go to our material palette. And when we use the shelf tool, it assigned a shader to us, the candle. And let's go to our render view. I only really need it to render the flame right here. So I'm going to hold shift and left click and drag right here. And now we're telling it to only render right here. So when you look at a regular lighter, the flame looks a little bit different than this. For one, it's blue on the bottom and yellow on the top. Let's go ahead and change that. Go to our candle, and in our temperature to color ramp, we're going to take out we're gonna change this white. Let's change it to a blue. See what that looks like. Still not enough blue. I want to be able to see it just until it turns yellow. So I'm going to drag these around. Yeah, that's looking more realistic. Definitely looks like it's being sourced by a lighter fuel of some sort. Now let's apply a material for our lighter. We already have a iron here. Grab our iron and apply it. Let's check it out. Like that. Alright, so you probably saw these big spheres here, which is our spark, our lighting source. We want to shrink that up significantly. Let's go to our sparks. Points are assigned an attribute called p-scale. And p-scale is the size of the point, but we want to shrink the p-scale. So I'm just going to do a little bit of Vex. Vex is basically the code for Houdini. So I'm going to drop down a point wrangle, And that's where all vex is written. I'm gonna wire this in. And it's a really simple vexpression. So the attribute, I'm going to do at. It's another way of saying attribute. Attribute p scale equals, and I'm going to type in 0.01. And all vexpression is ended with a semicolon. Let's click away from that and see where our points look like. Smaller, but not small enough. Let's see, 0.03. Really tiny. That looks pretty good to me. So while we're on the topic of sparks, we want them to be really bright. Let's assign the glow shader to that. Glow. And in this case, it's probably easier just to assign it on the geometry node itself. Render, material, glow. Nice and light. Let's make it even brighter, like emission 10. I want it to be just like this, maybe orange. A little bit yellow. So sparks have a trail to them. It's not just the particles. We actually have a tail coming from the source. And to do that, we want to go to our sampling tab and add a velocity blur. And it's still not going to do it because we need to go to our mantra and enable motion blur. Go rendering tab, allow motion blur. That'll give us the spark effect that we're looking for. Still not looking bright enough. Let's go to our material, glow, and enable, oh, I forgot to enable the emission. Looking at it now that we're emitting, let's make it a little more orange. Perfect. Let's check it out. Check out the whole scene here. I think I'm going to adjust the lighting just a little bit here. Let's make it even darker. Our intensity, let's lower it like a 0.1. Yeah, just barely visible. Let's adjust the camera a little bit. Camera. Yeah. Just play with it until we get the results that we like. A couple other things you can change in the candle shader is you can change how bright it is with the intensity scale. We don't really need to worry about smoke in this scenario because the scene is so dark anyways, and the flame is so little it doesn't create that much smoke, so I'm not going to worry about that right now, but I think I will increase the intensity scale. Let's see what 15 looks like. That looks pretty good to me. I think we're good to go ahead and start our render. So in the Out tab here, let's go to our mantra node and do a physically based rendering. Let's increase the pixel samples. A couple things you may want to play around with: the reflection, the refraction with the lighting, the stochastic samples. You may want to adjust that a little bit for the shading quality. I think I'm going to bump that up to 5 or a 6. And I think we're ready to go. So I'll check out my frame range. I'm still only going to do it to 240. That should be it for now, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know if you have any suggestions for upcoming videos or ways that I could have simulated this lighter better. We're all learning this together, so hopefully we can all just help each other out and give each other suggestions. That should be all for now. Thanks for watching. Bye!